pay a boy for entertaining her. A bite to eat at her house will save him money. Perhaps they'll bring another couple home with them. That would be fun.
He was a bread lord!
The morning stream. It's high noon.
All right, we're back. That was really good. I could get into that.
Yeah,
I could
cool
listen
stuff.
more
Like
to their
cool,
music.
you know, Britpop almost. Even though she's LA, but has that like a modern, but like a more uppity, not uppity. What's the word I'm looking for? Upbeat, upbeat Lana Del Rey.
Got
is what
it.
I'm trying to.
Got it. Which isn't hard to do because Lana Del Rey is a very downbeat.
Pretty downbeat. Yeah.
You don't get much more downbeat than her.
But not an uppity Lana Del Rey.
Yeah, good point. All right, we're gonna give this windy thing a try.
This
is gonna be super interesting, and
yeah, can't wait to try it.
My stuff works. If my stuff works. Happy are we?
Hello.
Oh my gosh!
Hello.
You picked up so quick. Hi.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you guys?
Oh, we're fine.
Good.
We're fine. Hey, I wanted to tell you a funny little family story. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I went to dinner with Ken and Misha the other night.
Yeah.
And,
Just you?
Me and Kim and them. We just had a little couples dinner, and it was nice. We had a lovely time, and went to this place called Garage. But anyway, it had all
Garage
these.
sale.
It would have reminded me. That would have Oaknow would have been there, but no, it would have been like something Dad would have loved. It was like an old garage, like a big repair oil changey kind of place that's been completely gutted and renovated and turned into this restaurant, but they still have like cars, old vintage cars up on racks, like above where you're eating. There might be a car right over you.
Oh, that's cool.
That was really cool. Anyway, so we're hanging out there, and the food was, it was all right. The company was better. Anyway, Morgan's telling the story, Misha is telling the story about Morgan, who, you know Morgan, she's just kind of a hoot and a freak, right?
Yeah.
In all the good ways. This is my niece.
She's a freaking hoot.
Yeah, she's a freaking hoot. And she went on a date or something where Lexi was also there with this boy that really likes Lexi, my other, her sister, my other niece. And Lexi says, Morgan, don't say anything tonight. I don't want you to embarrass me. I don't want you to say anything that's going to mess this up. Just don't talk about anything because you're going to embarrass me. I just know you're going to. I'm not going to embarrass you. I promise I'm not going to embarrass. So she went through this whole thing about how she's not going to embarrass anybody. The boy shows up. He has a Jeep, and it's kind of jacked up a little bit. And first thing Morgan does is walk over, put one foot on this big jacked up tire, just kind of sets it up there, doesn't even know this kid, and goes, so did you guys see those dams on the way up here? Man, how do they make those? What's the deal with dams? And just went on for like 20 minutes about dams. And the way Misha told this story was the most animated I've ever seen Misha in my life. It was the funniest conversation. So anyway, just a little bit of the local, just lofting it over your direction in Minnesota land.
I don't get it. Why was she talking about dams? I
don't
get
know
what she was doing, but dams?
I don't know. I don't know what that was about.
Dams.
That's amazing.
To this moment, I don't really understand why she was so fascinated with dams, but she couldn't stop talking about it. Like, do you think, like, how many people do you think built that dam? Do you think people died building that dam? And then, and Lexi would look at her like, are you done? And she just keep going, no, really, like, how much water would break a dam if there was enough water? Like, she was just like totally losing it. It was really fun.
That is awesome. I was thinking you were going to say she put her foot up on the tire and said, what are you compensating for, son?
Right.
Well,
that's what I would do.
She could have gone that route, but thankfully she did
she's
not.
nicer than me.
And while I've got you, Wendy, quick recommendation for you, because this is something that's in Denver and in Minneapolis, is Upstairs Circus. It's a place called Upstairs Circus.
Okay.
And you go there and you drink wine. If you want wine, you don't have to drink wine if you don't want wine. But you do these really cool art or craft projects. It sounds like one of those, paint your own ceramic monkey kind of places, but really, really cool stuff. Tina and I did it for our date this last weekend. It was really cool.
Paint your own monkey. That sounds good.
Paint your own ceramic monkey.
All right.
Sounds awesome. So last weekend we went to a speakeasy, and it was hilarious. It was done really well. Yeah. But you can tell like its heyday is kind of over. We knock on this. It looks like a brick wall with this tiny little slatted thing, and we're just like, "Hey, can we come in?" And the guy's like, "What's the password?" and a friend of mine goes, "Yeah, I actually don't know the password." He's like, "Tonight, that's the password." So we go in. They make us come in small groups. There were 8 of us, so like 4 could go in at a time. They made sure we were dressed appropriately. We're like, okay, what? Anyway, you climb up these stairs. It's like smoky, and you walk in, and you are in like everyone's got 20s flapper outfits on. They're all group dancing. There's a singer. Like it's really cleverly done. It's very fun. And you have to leave out of a different exit, and don't tell anyone. But also, they're not that popular, so they're like, tell everyone. It was so funny.
We did. It's not the Safe House, is it?
I don't think so.
Okay. There's a place down. I'm sorry. No, that's not Minneapolis. That's Milwaukee. Okay, forget it.
There's a place.
Yeah, but I think it's sort of like along those lines.
Yeah. Right.
And they used to have rules like. They have a list of rules like blah, 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 but they had covered up a few of them. And the rules they covered up were no cell phones and no pictures because they were trying to keep it secret. Now they're like, we just need to make some money.
Please tell everybody. Tell everybody to come here.
This sounds like that. This sounds like that place I was talking about over by the Fashion Place Mall here in Salt Lake called
the bee place, right? The place that had the honeybees and pancakes and stuff in the back?
No, it was the one where it was a speakeasy kind of thing, and you went into the whole front room space was like they made it look like an antique shop. And then she started hinting at you going, "Hey, so you guys here for anything else besides antiques? You looking for being all dumb?" And we'd say, "Sure." And they go, "All right." And then they opened up a false wall that was like a shelf full of stuff opens up, and now there's this huge restaurant in there. And it was called what's it called? Not Apple. What did we call it when we banned alcohol?
Prohibition.
Prohibition. It's called Prohibition.
Gotcha. Which is the London version of that is it's a XXX porn shop. and you walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is too legitimately a frontier. It's kind of painful. And then you go down the stairs, and it's this fantastic restaurant. It's clever because you are like, cool. I am in the seediest, grossest neighborhood and place, and it's all legit. And then suddenly you're like, this is a 5-star restaurant.
Well, there you go. We
That's
actually
not
have
the Fashion Place Mall version.
Oh no, never. We have it's not in the mall, I should mention. It's like a whole separate thing out there. But anyway, hey, it's Therapy Thursday. Wendy's here. She helps people with real problems all the time. And Thursdays when she does it here, you guys call in, and we got a call already. They've been on hold for a bit. Let's see if we can find out who this is, and hopefully it works. Hi, who's this?
Hi, this is Eric. Is this call Wendy's?
It is. It absolutely is. Thanks for hanging in there for us. We appreciate it. What's on your mind today? What's going on?
Hi. Yes. So, just a quick comment that my topic isn't super inappropriate, but it might be NSFW.
All right.
So if there's kids listening, I just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
Fair enough. You hear that, everybody? You've been warned. Go ahead.
We've talked about Wendy has talked about the topic before, and I have a specific angle on it that I'm trying to address, and so I'd like to just bring it up to you guys. And essentially, I've been listening to you for maybe a decade now, Scott, and Wendy. I've heard all of your segments. And so I have been dating a girl for about 3.5, 4 years now, and we are very, very serious. She's a lovely girl. I like her family. Everything fits very well. I want to marry her. That is certainly something that crosses my mind often now that it's been so long. I'm 28, if that helps. And so... the next step is certainly marriage. We don't live together, but we want to do that as soon as we get married. And one thing that I've been working on myself, an issue that I think I have before I want to get married is it's kind of hard to talk about to you, Scott. I think you have a really good view on it, and I don't. And it's essentially that I will try very often, like every week, will try to not watch any sort of, let's call it just porn in general. Doesn't necessarily have to be, gross, what you'd consider like, really graphic stuff. I mean, it's like even music videos will be something that I would watch, but essentially I try and stop and not watch that so that I can be a better person and give my life more time to do things that are productive. But also I don't feel like that's fair to my girlfriend, and I want to fix that before I enter into a marriage with her. But the problem is that, 4 or 5 days go by or whatever, and then the pull to do that, to watch something, is so great that I, can hardly walk around without thinking about it. And, it's starting to lead to like dangerous activities where I'll be like, oh, I have my phone, in my car. I can literally put it up on the dashboard and watch a YouTube video or whatever. And so I already see that it's becoming an issue, and it has been an issue for a while. And now it's like something that I need to address before I ever get married, is my feeling. And also I want to address it just on my own. But when I try to, I fall into that cycle of addiction. And so I'm just wondering if there's something, that you haven't mentioned before. I know you've talked about in a couple segments about addiction and pornography, but specific to maybe my scenario.
Sure. This is a great question. I'm really glad you came here with this question. Wendy, where do you want to start with this?
Thank you for sharing that. And part of why, it's not easy to talk about, because you kind of get two responses from people. It may be like, oh, come on, it's normal. What are you talking about? Don't worry about it. Or maybe the other extreme, which is like, you're a horrible person, and shame, right? So to even just say it out loud and to ask for help is a big deal. So good job for that. Can I ask you a couple questions?
Whoops, sorry, I muted him. I didn't mean to. Yes, you probably said yes, right? All right, go ahead.
You probably said yes. You're mind reading now, Scott. Okay, so is there how long has this been a problem in your mind? Maybe initial sort of foray into it, and then when did you sort of think, I don't want to have to do this? Like, when was it problematic for you?
Yeah, so initial foray, probably way younger than most people. I would say like 10. Right around when the internet was starting to be something that everyone had. I was about 10 at that time, and so it's been literally a constant thing in my mind since that age. And I realized that it was an issue probably around 16, 17. And like I said, I'm 28 now. So it's been something that I've constantly, every week, of my life, every day of my life, been trying to push back against. And I am looking for a therapist. I know that's going to be one of your suggestions. I'm trying to find someone in my area that would be the right fit for that.
Right. Okay. So we're talking, this is an 18-year habit, which is significant. That's a long time. So of course there's reasons you're struggling. And also sort of the wiring of your synapses at 10 around a high dopamine producing activity this makes some sense. So I have a question. Is there a religious thing in your background of like, this is bad, don't do it? Or maybe a family dynamic that's sort of very clear cut, like that is not what we do in our family, that type of thing?
No, not at all. So no one in my family is overtly religious. No one goes to church. And so there's been no like shaming of any kind. I think probably, if I think back to the first time that I ever saw anything explicit, it was by accident. And my dad had it on the TV, and I was probably like 5 at the time. So like it was accepted in my household. Obviously, if they had known that I saw it, they would have turned it off or done something. But I didn't tell them that I saw it. I just went back to my room. So that's like the earliest thing I can think about of knowing what it was and how my family perceived it was. It's a okay thing for adults to have and do.
Right. So there wasn't the shaming of it or but you have felt the need to make it secret, your usage?
Yeah, I have. You joke about it with your friends, and some of them have, like you said, varying opinions on it. I have also told my girlfriend that I watch too much of it and that I'm working on it. So I've at least, to a couple people have admitted, hey, I think it's a problem, but to varying
and what is
degrees
her take
of
on
reception.
Tell me a little bit about her take on it.
She probably doesn't understand it. She doesn't watch it. She doesn't watch anything herself. She doesn't really even, masturbate a whole lot. But she is super supportive of me, and we did have for like a couple weeks or maybe a month or so, like I had asked her, hey, maybe it would help since, I'm working on this right now, if you would check in. And then she'd check in, and, a couple days would go by, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm doing great. Went to the gym, hung out with friends, like stayed away from those areas of my life where I know it's more easily accessible. And then inevitably, like day 3 would roll around, and she'd check in on me, and I will have spent like 3 hours like playing video games and watching porn for that night. And I'll tell her, oh yeah, I'm doing great. Don't check on me anymore. And so like, it was definitely a very much like I was either annoyed at her for asking sometimes, or I would just hide the fact that it was still happening.
Right. Okay. So would you say, let's talk briefly about just the damages it does in your life. So at this point, it sounds like you can maintain a relationship, and maybe you got a job. Like, is pornography, obviously it's concerning to you. So give me a sense of what the price is you're paying that you're cognizant of.
Sure. So actually, miraculously, I feel like I have a very healthy life aside from that one dark corner. I have a really good job, a great relationship with my girlfriend, loving friends and family. Where it's damaging is both the fact that I'm wasting an extreme amount of time on it. Like sometimes I'll look back at my history when I'm like clearing it or hiding it, and I'll be like, oh, I'll tally it up. That that week I spent 10 hours like zoning out and watching porn, which is, awful. When I look at that, 10 hours a week, I could do so much more with 10 or 15 hours a week. And then the second issue is it's preventing me from, I feel like it's preventing me from having an actual pure relationship with my girlfriend. When I try and quit, I then start, if I'm not looking at porn for 3 or 4 days, I'm, not necessarily flirting with other girls, but like, oh, it'd be so much fun to go out on a date. Like I miss dating. And I know for sure that that's just from every night seeing a different girl on the screen, maybe 100 different girls on the screen. Like I know it's affecting my relationship. And if I want to take it to the next level and actually like graduate from this immature sort of high school stage and actually become, a man to this woman that I want to marry, that it's affecting that eventually.
Okay. So you're doing this the right way, which is beforehand. So congratulations on that. I think most people have sort of a sense of like, well, we minimize it, right? Like, oh, it's not that bad. And once I'm married, I'll be better or whatever.
I'll wait till it becomes a problem, and then I'll do something about it, kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
Right. And part of, I would say you probably have, this is a weird way to say this, but the luxury of doing it the right way, because you don't have all the shame that sort of exacerbates all of this for folks. So that's a good thing. So you're in a good spot to treat it. And one way to think about this, I think might be helpful, is that you wired your brain at a very young age for this addiction. This is, wasn't your fault. You saw it at a young age, and the track that typically takes, you're on, and that is sort of, I hate to say inevitable, but it kind of is. But so getting off of it, it's the problem is it never felt like no one took you to some creepy sex den and was like, let me show you the world. Your head would have exploded. It's the gradual exposure to more and more and more. And you're feeling sort of the pain of it at 28, but I promise the pain of it at 38 and 48 is quadruple what you feel now. And so it's about intervening in a way that's effective now. and sort of seeing this as a really great window of opportunity. So I appreciate that you're willing to do that. So yes, find a therapist, find someone who's specifically good at sort of these behavioral type of addictions that, can, first of all, help you figure out the thinking that leads to it. So you described a really classic scenario where, like, I'm really great for 2 or 3 days, and then in order to feed the addiction, I'm willing to lie to my girlfriend and be angry at her. So, recognizing that for what it is. Now imagine you're married a long time. It's really easy just to keep blaming her, and it's her fault, or, and it sounds like, of course, you're not in that area. That's the place we don't want to go, because addiction has a roadmap. And the things that keep it alive are secrecy, sort of being able, there's actually a hit that comes from having something secret. Shame is the other one that really makes this a lot deeper and darker and embedded. And, so those things we have to be really careful of. And you're already tasting a little bit of that, like, I'm not going to fully be honest with this person that I love and I'm committed to after I've asked her to help me and do this. You can see how you're sort of turning around some of those. And that's what happens. That's what addiction does. It is sort of outside of you. So I would absolutely recommend finding someone. But I want to tell you one thing to think about that you can kind of think of in terms of your story, and you can throw out some thoughts if you want, is this idea of attachment. You are 10 years old, you see this thing that's confusing and exciting at the same time, and and then it becomes you're essentially your companion for the next 18 years. And anyone you're really bonded to and really connected with, you would die if you didn't see them if it was only every 3 days. You want to see them every day, right? And so this way to think about this is that you're very attached to this sort of one-sided relationship. It gives you something. And what it gives you is, first of all, it asks nothing of you. It does ask for your time and your soul, but it doesn't do it directly in that moment. It just gives you pleasure. It just is fun. It is entertainment. It helps you escape. It's all sorts of benefits. But it's a pretty mean taskmaster in the end, right? So it's this attachment that you have. So if you think about a way to develop a loving relationship with someone, you have to spend time with them. You have sexual feelings towards them, and those sexual feelings, especially with orgasm and release, are bonding. So you have bonding chemicals that occur. All of this has happened from a young age with people you don't know on a screen, and sort of an orchestrated version of what sexual life is. And so you're bonded and connected to that. And it sounds like you've got pretty good, healthy relationships in other places, which is awesome. But a lot of people can't always navigate both of those things. They can't attach to others and and sometimes it's, other substances. It's not always, pornography or gambling or something. But that attachment, so one thing to recognize is you need to break up with pornography. And all of us who've had a breakup know that there is a absolute craving to get back together with that person if they broke your heart, right? Like, I'll do anything, take me back, that feeling, right? And so if you break up with pornography and you break up for 3 days and then you're like, no, I'm going to go back, there is a bond and a connection, and it's about grieving that connection. It's about learning the skills that keep you away from going back to that connection. And so it's a combination of things. Nothing is wrong with you. You are not broken. You are absolutely normal. What's happened is your brain in particular, wiring that young to bond with that substance, has led to this moment. And it sounds like you're, pretty resourceful in all other ways. And so you're pretty well-rounded. But you're not wrong that this does not get better on your own. It does not get better. Someone who's checking it out once a month, we'd have a totally different story. But you're at this point, you can't go 3 days without it changing who you want to be a little bit. So thinking in terms of, this is a really bad girlfriend, right? Like a really bad relationship that it took a long time to get this point where it's really hurting you, but it's time to end that. So to have the support to do that is really important. The role your girlfriend plays can be important, and to navigate that in a healthy way, you definitely want some advice to do that So it is not her problem. It is not her job. It is not her addiction to break, but that her attachment to you is part of that healing bit. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, that makes an incredible amount of sense. And I have at times it's crossed my mind that it's like a relationship, especially when it's not necessarily sex that I'm watching. It's the same girl that just happens to have a lot of dance videos on YouTube or something like that. It is very much a relationship at that point, because it's like years and years of that same girl or that name that has always been there. And so I just don't think I've ever thought of that as that's a toxic relationship that I need to break up with. That girl times, all of them. Yes, that's going to be hard. But yeah, you've given me a couple of things to think about. And honestly, you and, you, Wendy, for sure, and Scott and Brian, you guys are awesome role models. So while I look for the therapist, I took some notes, but I'll probably re-listen to this segment. I really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Heck yeah. Thanks
You're
so
welcome.
much. Yeah. Especially for, I don't know, putting yourself out there in that kind of way. That's hard. I actually
you're not alone at all. I mean, it's hard to talk about for sure.
I have a kind of a follow-up. Oh, he's gone. A follow-up to you, Wendy. And that is this. If he's fixating on, let's say, I'm going to use a random example here that's probably not even close to what he's talking about, but just to me, it's sort of the same issue. But let's say somebody is like, oh, Ariana Grande, she's the one. I can't stop watching her videos. She's got that one where she shoots rockets out of her boobs. It's just so good. And now I just cannot get enough Ariana Grande. And let's say that it's just got nothing to do with pornography at that point. That somebody has just fixated on a celebrity, a performer, a singer, or whatever. Isn't that a different kind of projection? Like, what I mean by that is, like, if they then enter the relationship that they're going to enter, and they've got this in their head that everything must be at the Ariana Grande standard or forget it. Like that seems hard to deal with.
Like setting this immeasurable bar for your other relationships.
Right. And I'm not sure she's the best example for that or not. I say it in, without much knowledge about this, but it just seems like if you're, on the one hand, you have people who are like, well, I'm watching porn all the time, and so therefore I've got these ideas of what the female form should be, or what they should be doing for me, or all of the things that these expectations that end up not really being rooted in reality. And then that seems different to me than saying, I've got someone I idolize who in my mind is perfect, someone I'll probably never meet, and then now I want to shift to a real relationship. That's a different kind of projection. Or is it? Right. Maybe I'm wrong at even wondering that.
I would maybe categorize it more as grades, right? Like a relationship, it's developing a relationship with a stranger. Right. And the best part about a stranger who has a team of experts project the image that is wanted to be projected, then it's a perfect relationship. They have no opinion. They don't tell you to clean up your apartment. They don't think you stink. They don't demand that you don't go out with your friends on Friday and you hang out with me. They don't ask anything of you. And I don't think most people are thinking in those terms. They're not thinking, I'm having a relationship with Ariana Grande. They are thinking, they feel great. They feel connected. They feel, and that is why, and you've probably seen this sort of celebrity wise, when somebody doesn't do something you want them to do. Like a great example is Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. Yeah. So they get divorced and people's like core of their souls are rocked because, and you're like, are you kidding? Like, how is that related to you at all? And what it is that you can look at a thing and not see the real thing. You can see the image of the thing. And our brains are not developed to understand this. And we feel a thing, and it's bonding chemicals, it's connecting chemicals, it's human attachment. So we can love them. We can think they're awesome. But then when we find out they're not what we thought they were, it's like deeply hurtful or personal. And you may feel silly, like, oh, I'm embarrassed that I'm so sad I cried when they got divorced, or I'm so sad, when it turns out your favorite star is kind of terrible and someone catches them on tape being horrible to another human being, and you're like,
we've had a lot of that over the past year.
Yeah.
How could I have been dating this person? And you're like, they're not dating them, but that is the similar chemicals. So here's the antidote to this. I think it happens for people who are really craving connections that maybe they don't have in their real life. But the problem is it gets cyclical. It gets worse and worse and worse because the real people in your life are boring or complicated, or like they're never going to give you what you need. And you're now accustoming your sort of endocrine system to the highs of what did this famous person just do? Or in the case of the caller, like he's been following the same porn star or the same dancer who's not a porn star for years. And that is it's a relationship. And how you don't want to know that she farts, right? Like there's no video of that. Well,
there is. You just got to look.
Yeah, you just got to look for it. You never say
right,
never on the
internet.
internet.
That is a totally different subject. But the idea being, like you want the fantasy. You can keep it going. It's one-sided. It's it's in your control. And real life is just not. And life is messy and more complicated. So the more you can escape into these false relationships, the less you deal with your own. But then eventually there's sort of a crisis point where you kind of, this is why people lose everything. They lose their ability to, from their job to their actual relationships. And that's why you don't feel good.
Right.
So it's a dopamine hit, and it's a high, and it's a buzz, and it's a bond, and it's all the stuff that makes being human awesome. Yeah. But that it's pretty empty afterwards. As opposed to a partner, you're working really hard to get along, and you have bonding moments, and you're attached and safe, and there's a real person in the world that has your back. That isn't empty after the bonding.
Right.
And so we're built to do this. We just now have a way to have an image of someone else that sort of tricks our brain.
Yeah, it's not just the village girl up the road in the hut. It's like a different level of access. And I kind of had a recent experience like this. I'm absolutely not comparing myself to this dancer he's talking about, or Ariana Grande, or any of these people. But
you're a dancer.
I had somebody who said that they've listened and followed me for like 12, 15 years, and in his words, just loved everything I did, and wanted to support it all the time, and was just always behind it until I made it known that I think Trump's an idiot, and now he can't deal with it. He can't stand me. He doesn't want anything to do with me. He sure likes to email me and tell me this occasionally for some reason, but he in his head, that broke his whatever that was. That thing where he felt like because I'm in his ears all the time and for so long that I'm part of his world, and then that part of his world is not a Trumpy idiot, and he didn't like that at all. Like that really sent him in a funny direction, despite the fact that I could get into it and I won't. But the point is, like, I felt a piece of that. I understand that weird kind of pseudo relationship you feel you have with people, and part of that is because, especially on this show, we just are ourselves in a really basic way. Like we don't. Right. There's no pretense. We're not pretending to be anything here.
We aren't. These aren't characters we're playing. We're
no.
Brian really is this nice.
Yeah.
And Scott really is this.
I'm nicer, actually. I have to portray this kind of edge.
Yeah. I really am this dumb sometimes. Like it's like genuinely, we are who we are, and I think part of that, it can go both ways, because on the one hand, you can be Ariana Grande, where part of your brand is that you project this image of kind of perfection. I'm only using her because I've started using her. I swear this is not because I have something with Ariana Grande. I really don't care anything about her music.
No, you just said that you started using her.
I know that also sounds bad, but you know what I mean. Like her image of kind of the perfect and the voice and the this and the that and the skin's never bad and all that is part of that, and it's easy for somebody to fall for that. What I'm saying is sometimes people fall for the opposite, which is our accessibility, our, for lack of a better term, down to earthness, or our, we're fallible and we're okay showing that we're fallible. Like that's also attractive, I think,
because you see the warts and all.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly, and you accept those warts. So, I don't have warts, but I used to have warts.
Yeah, you don't have warts. Well, so last night I did a podcast with Photogs United. It's a photography podcast about it's 4 photographers, and he never has anyone on who is a photographer.
Right.
So I'm in that category of unskilled photographer. And anyway, we were talking about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was sort of at the end doing the thing that you guys all do, like it's part of the biz, to be like, well, where can we find you online? I'm like, you know, I'm terrified of online. Like I don't, and I think part of it is this, and this is what's hard, and this is why I don't wish fame on anyone, is that you have this weird responsibility to a bunch of strangers to not hurt them, right? Like I don't know. And I think it naturally occurs when you click and connect with somebody. And the Trump thing is a perfect example of, like, it's this moment. Everything you thought you knew about someone suddenly is different because of either you like Trump or you don't like Trump. But before the Trump question was involved, I liked everything I heard. I felt like I knew you. And there's a weird betrayal that happens. But it's this one-sided thing. You know, you don't feel betrayed that he likes Trump.
No.
You just didn't even know he existed.
No,
maybe.
and I don't even mind that he does, and I don't mind that we can have a heated conversation about it. Like in my mind, it's just another thing that we could talk about, and that we can also find common ground. And he's decided to put a line in the ground and say never again. So never again.
Yeah. Well, and the reality is that tells you the level of the bond and the relationship for him, and that there was enough to end that. And that's the thing which would cure the pornography problem for Eric, I think was his name, is if he could have a sit-down conversation with these women that he has built online, you know, love relationships with or connections with, and see all the realness, and have the, you know, them actually reject him, like do the things you do in a real relationship. If he could experience that, it would really help this. The problem is when we keep it in fantasy, you are so Scott, you're down home, interesting, fun, you're great until you cross my line. That actually made you real. Yeah. The down home realness was still the fantasy. Yeah. And so, there's this dynamic of, you know, sort of being the famous person and having to be careful, and then being the person observing and really wanting that person to be everything you want them to be. Yeah. And that's what's, I think, long-term mature love in a marriage. People can say, hey, we're not built for this monogamy long-term stuff. And in some ways we definitely are not as human beings, but we have this ability that is pretty cool if we can do it, which is navigate the real relationship, compromise, communicate differently, better, figure out how there's a lot of marriages, one likes Trump and one doesn't. And that is rough because he's a polarizer. That's what his main job in life is to be, right? And so how they navigate that, because it means something. If you like him, that must mean blah blah blah, because that's how human brains work. Yeah. When really it's not what's really happening. Right. But in the realness of your face-to-face relationship, you can work that stuff out. Yeah. And that's the thing about his girlfriend, is that's where he can work real stuff out. He's practicing that skill in his real life. The problem is getting hijacked because of something he started when he was 10. I have a 10-year-old. They're idiots, right? Like should not be trusted with anything. And to start a relationship at 10, which he has done, means that's an 18-year marriage to break off. That's really tough. Yeah. So he needs good help, and he needs support. And, it might be that he finds a group or, other ways to not be alone in doing this process, so that it isn't simply relying on his girlfriend to make up the difference, because that's why it's an attachment problem. Yeah. And people will always say, well, use your wife. Well, you're going to destroy that relationship. Imagine if it was real girlfriends, like, okay, I'm dating you so I can get over her. And you were honest about that. That's not going to work. Right. Right. So he's right. He needs to deal with it himself. But it's hard because it's one hell of a breakup. Yeah, it's hard, especially that. I wonder if you could, there are no statistics on this, but it'd be interesting to see if during this particular era of political unrest, if there are actual divorces due to this, or if they were already on the edge and this just pushed it over. Like, it's hard to get that stuff statistically, but I'd be very curious about it. Like this guy, I'd love to sit with this guy and go, I I would have voted for Reagan if I was old enough, but I wasn't.
I like Bush Sr. I voted for him. I voted for Bob Dole because Bob Dole says because he was great. He'll rip you a new corn shoot. I like Bob Dole. So I used to vote for these guys in their party. I was a registered Republican. Like, I want to be able to tell him these things, but he didn't want to hear any of that. And so, because to him, he's just, no, you're a left-wing weirdo, and now I hate you, and that's just where he's at, and that's what he's decided. But to me, in a relationship scenario where it's not about politics, but it's about some of this other stuff, it's not really that different, is it? Like, you got to have somebody willing to at least look at the full picture and listen to the full story, because otherwise they're just going to have their narrative and run with it. And anyway, the long and the short of it is our caller by just by calling us today and laying this stuff out in such raw terms. I mean, that's a giant step, I think. That's a freaking...
For sure.
How many people make that step? Like 1 in every 4 billion or something? Like, I don't know.
Wow, 4 billion.
Maybe not 4 billion. That's pretty bad. That's like 2 people.
Yeah, that's like 2 people. It was Eric and like Jimmy. Now, I think your analogy with this guy who... It's this... The thing that's missing is, honestly, it's what the brain does when it's face to face with another person.
Yeah.
It's why the internet to me is a hellscape, is that the right parts of people's brains aren't getting triggered because they're not looking at a face. Right. They're not hearing a voice. They're, like we talked about last time, it's text, and text does not soothe our nervous system. And text does not bond us. It is not enough. We are not evolved enough for text to be working. And so if I was like, the fact that you're a registered Republican, I'm like, Scott, what were you doing registering?
Well, I mean, this was, a while ago. This is before conservatives went banana time,
Exactly. And it's not even, but here's the thing. I have 98%, 99% of my other relationship with you that we can then talk, and it's not a threat to that.
Right.
But if you have nothing but a perceived image of someone, it's pretty devastating. So, and that's why movie stars and porn stars and all the stars will pay all the money so that one thing gets projected and it stays projected. And, the realness is really not an option for them to keep their position because, and yeah, it's tricky. And it always comes back to, and, it's easy to say. It always comes back to, what's your real life like? What are you doing?
Yeah.
How are you spending your time? Who are you connecting with? Are you alone?
Right. Yeah.
We're not meant to be those things. If we are, then there's sort of ways some of this stuff can get distorted. Yeah. And Eric, to me, sounds like somebody it's just, this is why we need to protect kids from porn with 10. It is.
Oh, yeah. No.
Some kid, it may have been no big deal. It's not everybody. It's not going to be everybody. But it's Eric. He doesn't have that weird cultural shame or the religious shame. His parents are fine. Like, he's got a good life. Like, all intents and purposes, this kid should not have an addiction. But he does.
Yeah. And he's seeing
it has a lot to do with being 10.
Yeah, it has we were talking before we had you on the air about why Carter can't watch anything with zombies in it. And it's because someone at age 9, a friend of hers at her friend's house, sat down and they watched, of all things, Zombieland. Right? The one with Bill Murray in it? Brian, am I thinking the right one? Yeah, which is kind of satire.
Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah, it's satire, but also, it's not meant to be just a horror movie. There's all this satire built into it. But she's 9, and she doesn't know what she's not seeing the complicated satire in it. So now she's 21, and even the suggestion that maybe there's something on TV or somewhere that's got to do with zombies, she's wherever the other opposite side of that is. She doesn't want to be anywhere near it. And I'm not saying that it's exactly the same, but this stuff can be traumatizing to a kid. And if you're 10 and someone shows you porn or you run into it or whatever, your brain just is not the same as it is if the first time you saw it was when you were 30. It's a totally different animal. So people out there are like, man, it's good for him. Get him started early. I don't know, man. It's just like anything that has to do with like important stuff in their lives. In the case of zombies, death and destruction and mortal harm and bloods and guts, or human sexuality that has so much interrelational stuff going on with it, and power and not having power and all these other things. Like, why wouldn't that be a harsh impact? Like, of course it is.
Right. And it is traumatizing, and initially very traumatizing. And then suddenly it's like, I'm scared of this, but it also feels good. And so it's a very confusing thing. Unlike zombies, I don't know if at 9 you can then have a zombie experience be terrifying and then feel good right away. Like, it's not quite the same.
Right.
Death doesn't quite have the same power as sex. So the other day, my 10-year-old, I can't find Adam or him. And I'm like, where are they? And I go downstairs, and they're, I walk into his bedroom, and it's that vibe of like, this is a serious parent moment. Be quiet, be reverent. Let's, So I sit down, like, okay, what is happening? And he asked some questions about sex, and his sweet little 10-year-old mind, who has not seen porn, I checked, don't worry, and I check all the time, he just is picking up on the cues that life has to offer, and he's like, he just thinks it's gonna hurt. So we're having conversations about it doesn't have to be painful, and like trying to answer his cute little weird innocent questions. And it's easy to go overboard because you're scared, you want to protect him or whatever, but like the 10-year-old brain is not a place for adult themed anything. And unfortunately that's just the reality. So if I'm going to throw out some advice for parents, just check in with your kids, ask them if they've seen anything, if they want to talk about it, build a good relationship so they can.
Keep them away from the internet until they're 20.
Yeah, if that is at all possible.
Yeah, probably
and
not.
It isn't possible, and they are going to see stuff, but if they can talk about the trauma they just had with someone they trust, go from the internet version of my experience of myself to my real relationship with my mom or dad, or with my brother or sister or my caring friend.
Right.
And so pulling it away from that means we don't lead to this addictive sort of relationship. We have a bond with another person, and that person cannot go, oh my gosh, you're going to hell, or you're going to just ruin the whole thing.
This is the number one advice. People always say, well, do you have any advice? You got 3 kids. They all seem pretty good. Well, how'd that work for you? And they all want to know the one piece of advice, and that's usually the one. If you hear your 8-year-old running around the house with her friends giggling and going and saying the word sex, don't go, not in this house. Freaking, I can't believe it. You're going to wash your mouth. That was so, like, don't do that. What you do is you go,
make it a taboo thing.
No, go. Oh, hey, wait a minute. How'd you guys hear that word? Do you want to know what it means, or what do you like? Get in there and have a conversation, coat it with a nice layer of love, and be there for them to understand. That's it. Like the minute you go, oh my goodness, I can't believe you. You're just asking yourself for a lifetime, especially teenage time, of trouble. You will.
Yeah. And here's where, like, so Scott, you don't have a lot of baggage, so you can get in there, and it's like, yeah, let's do this. Let's talk about this. We grew up in a home where we'd sit around at dinner and talk about what is euthanasia and what do you guys think? Like it was just a safe place to do that. So that's in your wheelhouse. You were trained that way, but there are people who are not trained that way, and they have never really dealt with some of that stuff. So if your kid says something that triggers you, that is a good sign. You got some garbage to deal with.
Yeah.
And you can deal with it. You can get better at this. You can go into the fray and have some confidence but you've got to work on yourself. So I always tell people, if they come to me like, I'm having this problem with my kid, the first thing I do is like, so what's wrong with your relationship, your primary marital peer relationship? So whether you're married or your partner or whatever. Yeah. And they're always like, what the crap? I want to talk about my kid. I'm like, nah. Yeah. Because when your real life, your relationships, your, same age peer stuff, your work life, all the stuff that is you, if that's healthy, then you can deal with your kid easy. But really, half the time we're projecting our junk onto a kid.
Yeah.
And then there's no way I'm helping that kid. So how's your marriage? And they're always like, I don't want to talk about my unhappy marriage. I'm like, well, then call someone else. And it's because that's where it stems. And so, figuring out your own junk is honestly the best way to parent.
Yeah, it is. And it's okay to acknowledge that you got you got your own junk. It's fine.
Yeah. And if you were raised by like World War II vets that are like, no feelings, no faces, then you need some help. Or if you were raised by hippy dippies that gave you marijuana when you were 6, you got to get some help, right? There's none of us who had the perfect anything. Mm-hmm. But acknowledging it, fighting against it, denying it, none of that.
Well, I think hopefully we've helped Eric, and we've also helped the world. today. And the world. If you have questions for Wendy and you want to have them answered on the show, you can be our live caller next week or whenever we do it next. We have one next week? But I got to figure that out because Brian's out of town. I don't know what we're doing.
Don't ask me.
Yeah. We don't know yet.
Just nice.
But let us know. You can find Wendy on the internet. Wendy Dunford on Instagram, for example. You can see her photography, which I think is fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm about as basic as you get. It's good. I should talk to all photographers and give them advice.
Yeah, why not? Why not, indeed. So we recommend you doing that. Also, check out therapythursdays.com. And as always, you can email us too if you have any questions. Our email address is themorningstream@gmail.com. All right.
And Eric, let me say this if you're still listening. I would really love a follow-up on sort of, even if it's just a quick, here's the treatment I'm doing, it's helping, some kind of follow-up would be awesome. I'd love that.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it as well. And I happen to know that he's like a super funny guy, and I think that helps with this sort of stuff. It helps to, be a little bit.
He's got a good head on his shoulders, and he's incredibly brave and deserves props for calling in and talking about this
dude,
openly.
just laying it out on the show like that. That's hardcore. Yep. It's impressive.
That's awesome.
Anyway, Wendy, have a fantastic week. We will miss you in between times, but we hope you have a good one. We'll talk to you later. Bye now. Bye. All right. Good stuff today.
Totally good stuff. Yeah.
A fine conversation was had across the board. All right. Quick thing here. I'm going to read an email at the end of the show here. This came to us from our good buddy Steven Schleicher of Major Spoilers fame. You're familiar, right?
Familiar, yeah. I think I've heard of that guy before.
Yeah, he's pretty great. We love him. He
gives me threatening phone calls every Monday at 9:30 p.m. or 10:30 p.m.
AM. You should report him or something. Finally get that taken care of. Jeez Louise.
You get them too?
Yeah, I get them too. So I bet we're getting them at the same time. It's crazy. He says this. You mentioned 1984 is the best year for movies. He says nostalgia plays a huge part of it, but so does the fact that you are at the peak of your formative years. There is good evidence that suggests no matter how old you are, whatever you were exposed to when you were between 13 and 18 will be the things that stick with you the most. Cheers, Steven. I think he's dead right. I think the stuff that sticks out and stays with you, including kids today, are the things they see in those formative years. Like in Nick's case, I asked him what his favorite movie was, and what did he say? Shoot. It was something like Hell or High Water. It was like a more modern thing. And that's a great movie. He loves a good Western like me.
Movie, yeah.
And he's super into it. But and I don't think anybody even 20 years from now will besmirch him on that. They'd say, that was a good movie. It's just that these are the things he locks into now. If he was locking into Step It Up 2, then that might be a thing he thinks fondly of. I mean, how many times on Film Sack do we get an email from somebody saying, please be kind to this Nicolas Cage nightmare. It was my favorite movie growing up. Like
exactly, yeah.
It's the same thing. So, Steven, you're right on the money there, buddy.
Our trivia guy last night, our trivia host, a guy I really like. His name is Chris, and he's super cool. But we were talking about, he played a clip from Back to the Future as one of the questions, and he says, a very beloved movie, but not a very good movie. And I said, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You're wrong. And we had the table right next to him, so I was heckling him all night. But
that's funny.
It's a great movie. It's not going to win any Oscars. It doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
No, not necessarily. All right.
I think it was nominated for music or something, wasn't it? Or there was something.
Was it
special effects? Or
I don't remember.
Before the special effects category.
It was a long time ago. Anyway, that's good stuff. Hey, don't forget, if you'd like to vote on today's show title, which there are plenty to vote on, you can go to frogpants.showbot.tv. Jeannie or somebody in the chat will be pasting that, so you'll have no excuse but not to click it. If you'd like to support the show, patreon.com/TMS is the way to do it. And because you do, on Fridays we have a PM edition. That will be no different tomorrow, 3:30 Mountain Time. Oh, no, when do you leave?
I'm here tomorrow. I'm good tomorrow.
You're here tomorrow. I don't want to screw that up. You're gone, so you leave Saturday, I guess.
I leave Saturday.
Yeah. Yep. So Brian will be here at 3:30 Mountain Time. We'll have a PM edition of the show. I think we're going to have John Kovalik on for a little bit with us at the top of the show, talking about his latest Kickstarter. If you don't know who that is, he is the artist behind such grand cartoon efforts like Dork Tower, but more importantly to modern tabletop gamers, he is the Munchkin artist. If you don't know John's work, you're under a rock. He's awesome, and excited to get him on here and talk to him for a little bit, have a little chat, and more fun stuff tomorrow at 3:30 Mountain Time right here at frogpants.tv. Okay, that's it. Music, and this song we have, right? I mean, we have in a normal
the song
way.
we have. You have it. It's the thing. The Get Out of Denver is the song right there.
Got it. Get a bite of the Denver. Got it.
Get a bite of the Denver. This is a request from Paul Cavanaugh, who said, Brian, I want to send you and Tina off on your trip to Vermont with a song. I tried to find a rocking cover of Weekend in New England, but failed. Yeah, there's no such thing as a rocking cover of that Barry Manilow tune. So instead, we'll get you on your way with a cover of Bob Seger's Get Out of Denver. Wishing you safe travels and enjoyable weekend. Signed, Paul. It's this is a great song, and I mean the original Bob Seger version is good, but the Blues Traveler one is fantastic. We've played it on the show before, so I'm going to play a different one. This is from Dave Edmunds, who probably pop-wise is best known for I Knew the Bride When She Used to Rock and Roll. That's probably his biggest, his most famous thing.
Yeah.
However, the dude is like this great Brit pop, power pop rocker. Then what's the cat like?